Hello makers! Welcome to another episode of 3D Maker Noob. I'm Joe, and today we're going to review the Wanhao Duplicator i3 Plus. Stick around. Welcome back makers. So about a month ago I received the Wanhao Duplicator i3 Plus, and back then I did an unboxing video and an initial review of the printer after doing a test print. Now it's been over a month, and since then I've put this printer through its paces. I've printed a lot of things with a lot of different filaments. I've also failed miserably at printing a lot of things with a lot of different filaments, but I think I have it dialed in now. So I thought to myself it's best for me to put out a proper review of this printer. As I said, I got the printer over a month ago. I bought it from a website called 3dpremount.com, and they had a Black Friday deal. In total, plus shipping, it cost me less than 400 euros, which was an absolute bargain. It came packed very well. The unit comes in two pieces, which is pretty much the bed and the gantry. Sticks together with 4 screws, and then you have a few cables to plug into each other, which are very clearly marked, so it's very difficult to get it wrong. The initial setup was fairly easy. I followed the instructions provided on the booklet. The bed leveling took me about maybe 5 minutes following the instructions. However, later I found out that through the touchscreen there's also an assisted bed leveling method, which kind of make things a bit easier, because you have the extruder which moves in different places on the bed, so you can just adjust one at a time rather than having to switch it off and move it yourself. It came with an SD card. On that SD card it had a preloaded G-code, which is the OK sign, and it also had a Wanhao version of Cura on it. Now, the touchscreen is very intuitive. I quite like it, to be honest. Icons are fairly large, so it's very difficult to mistake one for the other. It has text clearly marked, and also the icons are clearly marked, so you tend to see always what you're doing quite clearly. Loading and unloading the filament couldn't be easier. You actually have an option on the touchscreen which says either load or unload filament, and what it does is you simply put the filament inside the extruder, you leave it there, you press load filament, it heats up the hot end. Once it reaches 200 degrees, it just starts pulling the filament on its own. Once it's done, you just stop it, and that's it. So once I got the setup out of the way, I decided to do an initial test print, which is the same test print I showed and mentioned in my initial review. And that was the OK G-code that came along with the SD card. Now, as I said in that review, I wasn't really impressed with the print quality. And I attributed that to the G-code that came preloaded, seeing as they wouldn't know what kind of material I'm using. They wouldn't possibly know all the settings that I would want to print with. So I attributed the issues with this print to that. So what I did was open Cura that came along with the Wanhao, and I decided to print 3D Benchy. Now this is the first 3D Benchy I printed. It started off absolutely great. Granted, the top and bottom layers, I was still getting the hang of Cura. I was getting the hang of 3D printing, to be completely honest. And it wasn't really covering the top and bottom layers. The reason for that is it was probably set at only 2 layers rather than 3 or 4. However, the issue that bugged me most is that at some point during the print, it kind of squished a couple of layers. It just did not keep on climbing up on the z-axis. It felt like it stopped for a layer or two and then continued onwards. So I stopped the print immediately and I tried to print another one. This one came mostly well. Same issues with the top and bottom layers, not enough layers to properly fill them. However, at the same exact spot, with the other 3D Benchy, it did the same exact thing. It seems like, I don't know, it just went really hot all of a sudden, and sort of melted a layer a bit more than it should. And it kind of over extruded in the layer. I wasn't quite sure actually, so I kind of gave up on the 3D Benchy after that. But anyway, I kept on trying. I wasn't going to give up, obviously. So after that, the first thing I decided to print was a spool holder for this printer. The reason for that is the spool holder that it comes with is actually quite short. And if you have certain spools like the Rigid Ink or the Osiprucia spools, they're actually quite large and it doesn't fit, and it sits on the side and it leans a bit. Initially it was fine, but I thought to myself, I'm going to print one. So I printed this, which I found off Thingiverse. This worked fine. All you do is simply rotate this, stick it in there, and lock it with this. The only problem is that the diameter of this is fairly large, so the spool actually sits a bit awkwardly and actually creates more friction than it does when it's like that. So I decided to take this off and leave it as it was. Following that, I decided to print the one print that I've been wanting to have since I started into 3D printing. And that was the marble game of Thingiverse. Now, as you can see here, I have three of them. 3 failed prints of them. So, I think this was the first one. Yes, this was the first one. At some point during the print, the layer completely shifted by about possibly by 3/4 of a centimeter, and the orientation was that it shifted to the right. Now, initially I thought to myself, because seeing as I had this issue with the spool holder, what I did was I put the Delta next to it and I used its spool holder to as a rest, because it's much more free-flowing. And initially what I thought was that at some point it got stuck and it jolted the extruder to the right, so that's why it happened. So what I did then was I tried another print. I moved the spool holder back in place. Lo and behold, exact same layer, actually it was the orange one, exact same layer height, it did the exact same thing again. And it kind of boggled my mind. I had no idea what the hell was going on, because it definitely wasn't the filament pulling the extruder, because it was still shifting to the same side, exactly the same side. But the spool was actually right on top of the extruder now, so it wasn't pulling it sideways. So it was very frustrating for me. I had to figure out, and especially for the fact that these were about 16-hour prints into this, that this happened. And that's a lot of wasted filament. But I really wanted to know what was happening. So what I did was I set up my camera in front of the printer. I changed the settings. I changed the speed, I changed the heat, maybe something would change. And I started printing again. And I also started monitoring the print from work through my iPhone. I have the Google app, which monitors the remote view. And I started seeing something happening, and I thought to myself, that looks very dodgy. That doesn't look right. So about 2 minutes in, after I noticed this one thing, this little curl on an edge of the PLA, this happened. Yes, that was it. it was purely a matter of cooling. What was happening was that the fan wasn't cooling as efficiently as it should have been, and some of the PLA was actually curling upwards, and it hit the fan shroud, forcing the extruder to jump a few steps because it just couldn't push forward any further. Sorry, to the side any further. So obviously then the first thing I did was I ordered a radial fan for the Wanhao, and also printed a new fan shroud. Now it's very important, if you decide to do this mod, make sure you order fans which are 24 volts, because the Plus is 24 volts. It's the Wanhao Duplicator I3 version 2.1 and below is 12 volts, but the Plus is 24 volts. So I downloaded this this fan shroud called the Cooler. I'll put a link in the description. And I also installed the fan. And since then, I haven't had any issues whatsoever. I have printed this, but not on the Duplicator i3 Plus. I've printed it on the Prusa for the simple fact that I really don't want to print this game on this machine ever again. It's just, you know, I dread it now. I absolutely dread it. So after sorting out that issue, I decided to switch to Simplify 3D. I had already purchased a copy. I hadn't used it yet, so I thought to myself, this seems like a learning machine for Simplify 3D. And I've actually been really enjoying myself. I found a lot of potential in this printer, and I started printing a lot of things. However, the first issue I came across was I started printing, and I did this this little cake. It's for the Christmas trees for my daughter Kate, and I've noticed that right at the end of the print, possibly the last, I'd say 1 or 2 centimeters of length of print, the printer just stops and finishes the print. It just wouldn't finish it. And it happened on about 2 or 3 prints. I kind of started looking around, and people were telling me that I have to copy the code from Cura to Simplify 3D, and I did that, but it wouldn't work. It would still do this. Later I found out from the Wanhao group on Facebook that I need to include 1 line of G code at the end code, which is M400. I can't remember exactly what it means, but it's something along the lines that it has to finish the print or finish the cache or something like that. Once I did that, then it started printing perfectly, and I was very happy. I printed this, oops, sorry. I printed this Rhino. This is called Carl, same as Carl here. It's tribute to him. It's my 3D block zoo. I printed this awesome gorilla designed by 3D Printed Aspie. I'll put a link to the description of all these things under the video. I was still testing out quite a lot of things. I was testing out supports, the height of the support, where it stops, where it starts. I was still fairly new to it, but I started getting the hang of it. And then I started printing a bit more complex stuff. I printed this My Little Pony for my daughter. This was printed in 3 pieces. This had a lot of support, but I think it printed out fairly well, especially the overhangs. It actually taught me quite a lot, so I was quite happy with that. I printed this awesome Buddha. This is in Filamentum Rosewood Timberfill. The reason why it's in dual color is because I'm actually working on this. I'm sanding it down, refining it. I want to spray it with a clear coat, so I haven't had time to finish it yet, but this is why it looks like this. Other than that, yes, it has a few details which need working on, but other than that, it came out quite great. Then I printed this deer. And this came actually quite nice. Granted, it's not perfect, but it's really, really nice. This was printed in Proto Pasta Glitter PLA. No support whatsoever on this. I was actually scared to put support because I didn't think I had enough from my sample of glitter PLA to finish this. So I risked it, and it actually worked out very well. If you look at the antlers, okay, they're not perfect, but if I didn't have that fan shroud, this wouldn't have been printed like this. I'm quite sure of it. Now, an issue I came across, but this I'm attributing to possibly my settings. I tried to print a Kirby in clear glass from Filamentum, and I seem to be having a layer split in the same exact spot over and over again. So that's possibly my settings. I still have to dial it in. So I'm not entirely blaming this on Carl over here. I'll take this upon myself. So after printing all of those and feeling that I got the hang of this printer, I decided to run the 3D Benchy test again, and also, more importantly, the OK sign again. The difference, man oh man, the difference. I was seriously blown away at the difference settings make in Simplify 3D. I've printed so much PLA, rigid ink PLA, that I kind of dialed in the settings now, and the difference is night and day. I absolutely love the result. The OK sign came pretty much perfect, so I'm very happy with that. 3D Benchy wasn't too far off from perfect either. I've obviously fixed the top and bottom layers. I've adjusted the retraction, the speed, so it came out absolutely gorgeous. So I'm really, really, really happy now. I think I have dialed this printer in. I've also printed a Kirby in rosewood timberfill from Filamentum. I don't have that, unfortunately, because I sent that out as a giveaway last week. That's on its way to UK at the moment. But other than that, now what I have done is I've installed the Flexion Extruder HT on the Duplicator i3 Plus. I'm testing out flexible filaments. I'm absolutely loving this printer now. It prints beautifully. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the Flexion. I will do a full review on that at a later date. I still have a lot of testing to do, but so far it's looking absolutely amazing. So now it's time for me to tell you what I like about this printer and what I don't like about this printer. The pros are that it is extremely user-friendly. It was very easy to assemble. It was very easy to start it up, set it up, and start printing. No more than half an hour and you are set to go with this printer. It is a very sturdy structure. It is built very solid. It's a metal frame, so you can't really go wrong with that. I actually find it to be fairly quiet. I have no problem running prints on this printer while I'm working, and as you can see, this is actually where the printer sits, just slightly further to the left, and I work over here, so I have no problem running it. I like the fact that you have live adjustment during the print. You can actually set the temperatures, set the fan speed, the bed temperature. You can actually adjust those while the print is running. It has lots of upgrades that can be done to it, such as the fan shroud, there are a million different types of spools, which I still have to print. Well, not all million of them, but one effective one. The only reason why I haven't done so far is because I was still waiting on some bearings to arrive. They actually arrived today, so I'm going to be having some more fun printing more things for this printer. Once dialed in, As you can see, the printer is awesome. The prints are absolutely gorgeous, and I'm now absolutely in love with this printer. So now I need to explain what I don't like about this printer. And actually I need to readjust that statement. I will explain things that I didn't like about this printer. And I say that because most of these things have been fixed. And I fixed them through the help I got from the Wanhao community on Facebook, the help I got from Thingiverse things that I printed. The only one thing that really bothers me is the issue that Wanhao had with the shorting out of the heat bed with the springs. I did a bit of search online, and the serial number on this printer is not affected by that issue. At least it doesn't seem like it. However, since watching Chuck's video, which once again I will link in the description below, it got me a bit weary of the issue, so I still insulated the spring from the heatbed just in case. I don't want to come home to find it on fire one of these days. Other trivial stuff is the spool holder. It bugs me that it's short. It could be slightly larger, but once again, as I said, you can print one, it's fine. You can actually design one, it's not that complicated. The only reason why I haven't done so far is because I was waiting on some bearings, because I want a more free-flowing spool, which have arrived today, so I'll be printing that very soon. The load and unload filament function, since it's automated, it only allows it to go up to 200 degrees. Now, if you're using some kind of special filaments, you need it to go much higher than that. And I'm scared that if I try that, I might clog the nozzle, and I've clogged this nozzle once, and it's not fun at all to clean it up. So I don't want to risk that. It just bugs me. It might not be an issue, but to me, I wish you could set it up somehow and sort of increase it or decrease it however you please. The fan shroud, as I said in the beginning, that was the biggest pain for me because there was so much waste involved, and I hate waste. But once again, all it took was a radial fan, print another fan shroud, which once again I will link in the description below, and that issue was sorted as well. And actually I need to add on top of that that fan shroud also works very well with the Flexion Extruder HT. The other thing I possibly don't like is the positioning of the thumbnail screws of the back. When you're leveling the bed and the bed moves forward, it's kind of hard to reach the back screws if you're in front of the printer. Granted, you can turn it around and just work with it. For me, it's very easy because the printer sits on an open-ended table, so I can reach from the back very easily. But for those who have the printer stuck against the wall, it might be a little bit of a hassle to adjust them. And the last thing is possibly because the G-code that comes with it, once the print finishes, the bed is pushed to the back and the extruder stays where it is. Once again, not really an issue because all I have to do is learn G-code and just fix those settings to push the bed forward and lift the extruder up. So as I said, the things that I don't like about this printer are things which are easily fixed. And as I said with the Prusa, I'm all for that kind of stuff because that's what gets you learning about 3D printers. So my final thoughts on this printer. I actually love this printer. I've had many issues in the beginning, frustrating issues. This printer has taken a lot of verbal abuse from me. And those who follow me on Twitter know what I'm talking about. But I've grown to love this printer. Once I've dialed the settings in and sorted out the minor issues it had, the prints are spot on. I can't really fault it much. And I believe this printer is absolutely great for people just starting out in the 3D printing world. It's very user-friendly, easy to set up, and easy to start printing with, meaning that it's literally non-threatening to someone who doesn't know much about 3D printing. This was the second printer I started using, and it kind of took me back of how easy it was to set up and start printing. Yes, the journey was kind of rough getting to where I am, but it took me a month. And within a month, you've seen the differences in quality of prints with this printer. So yes, I highly recommend this printer. It would be an absolutely awesome buy and very much worth the money you spent on it. So just a tiny disclaimer, guys. I want to point out that this printer, along with the other two printers I have, the Prusa and the Macromake, were not given to me. I paid for those printers with my hard-earned money. No one has asked me to do any of these reviews. I did those out of my own free will for two main reasons. One, I believe everyone should have all the information they can get before they purchase anything. Secondly, I enjoy the hell out of it, so why not? Guys, thank you very much for watching once again. Please click on like, leave a comment. I try to answer all the comments that I get. Subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, share it with all your friends and family, get them to come along, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy making, guys!